Okay, I wanted to try something a little different here, which is a kind of puzzle that's designed to train you to use the engine more effectively. Because I hear a lot of people say, don't use the engine, um, which is understandable because a lot of people misuse the engine and it maybe hurts their chess progress. But I think uh, used properly, the engine is probably your most powerful tool as a chess player. And I think a lot of people could get better at using it more effectively with a little work. So that's the idea. So I've got a position on the board, and there's like two levels to this puzzle. One, you can just do it as a standard puzzle. Try white to move. Try to figure out the best line. But then level two is to do it as sort of an open book exam and turn on the engine and try to figure out what's going on in the position. And your task there is to explain what's going on. So the engine is obviously going to give you its top line, but you should explain why those moves are best and any important alternatives, like anything that would look like a tempting candidate move from a human perspective and why those moves aren't as good. So if you want to give it a shot, you can pause the video and try that. And then I'll show how I would analyze this with an engine. Okay, so we see I've got the top three engine lines, and we see the top move is queen c1 with a big advantage for white, and a few other moves with only a small advantage. So it's always good to orient yourself in the position first. So what's going on in this position? Well, white's down a pawn, but we have more space. Our pieces are more active. It seems we have some pressure on the queen side. Black's queen is a little bit stuck on g7. So basically we're down a pawn, but we're kind of pressing positionally. And we're looking for a way to break through. So apparently queen c1 is the best move. So this is a diagonal retreat, which can be hard to spot, but it does put the queen on an open file, attack the knight, getting ready to infiltrate black's position on the queen side. So, maybe not the easiest move to spot on your own, but I can see there's a lot going for this move. So now looking at the computer's lines, I would have two big questions here. One is, so the computer's top lines are just moving the knight away in various ways, and white has a pretty sizable advantage in all cases. So here right away I have two big questions. One is, after a move like knight e7, white has a big advantage, but there's not an obvious immediate tactical knockout. So I'm wondering, is there some tactical point that I'm missing, or is it just that the queen coming in on the c file is just so powerful that white just has a dominant position? But then the really big question I would have is that queen c1 seems to allow knight takes d4, grabbing a free pawn with check. And even this pawn next would fall. Now that's not in the computer's top three moves, so evidently the computer thinks that would be a big mistake. So that's a huge question. What's wrong with knight takes d4 check? So let's look at knight e7 first, and we can continue with the computer's top line. So here I'm seeing that white has many moves that all lead to a huge advantage. So that's telling me that there's not some sort of specific tactical sequence that white needs to do to have an advantage here. It's just that white's pieces are so much more active that white has a dominant position. So the knight's attacked, queen f8. And so if we want, we could take this pawn now, or many other moves. But basically, in the starting position, white had a lot of positional advantages, but was down a pawn. Now we can get the pawn back, restore material equality, and have an even more dominant position with this queen on the 7th rank. So, okay, I think that makes sense to me. But now let's look at maybe the bigger question: what's wrong with knight takes d4 check? And so if there's a move you're curious about and it's not in the computer's top choices, there's a really simple way to force the computer to evaluate it, which is just to make the move on the board. Because the computer analysis that's displayed is always proceeding from the position on the board. So any move you want to see analyzed, you just make that move. Super simple. Now here, in contrast to the previous position where there were several moves that all gave white an advantage, here we can see there's only one move with a big advantage +5, and all other moves are much worse, no advantage whatsoever. So this is telling me there's a very specific tactical sequence here. So king d3 attacking the knight. Queen takes e5. Seems to be the most natural move, right? Queen f8 looks like we could just grab the knight then, if nothing else. So let's proceed with queen takes e5. And now we can see the line continues. Queen c8. You can also just press spacebar to play the computer's top move on the board. Queen h8 check. Okay, so a queen sacrifice, leading to a knight fork. And even here, it's still actually not that obvious because this was just actually a massive trade up to this point. Materials equal, but this knight actually has no safe squares. Every single move is covered. So, okay, this is the tactical point that the computer saw, going back to all the way back to this position. The reason knight takes d4 check was not in these top moves is the computer had already seen to this position and understood that this is completely lost for black because it's going to be down a knight in the endgame. So at this point, it's doing damage control with knight e7. But this brings up an important point, which is the computer's top line is what it thinks is best play for both sides. But the human main line is more like, what if both sides try to accomplish their goals in the most logical and direct way? So that's why I chose this position for this purpose, is because there's a very clear human main line with, from a human perspective, this line in this position is what you need to understand this position. But by default, the computer will not show that to you initially. But if you know how to use the engine, it's very easy. All you have to do is essentially make the first few moves on the board, and it will show you that. So I think this is sort of a good diagnostic. Like, if you analyze with the engine and you got to this position, you have a basic understanding of how to use an engine to analyze. If you didn't get to this position, then you don't. And what I would suggest is getting to that level is well worth like a little bit of time and practice, because what the computer really does, if you know how to use it, it lets you answer your own chess questions 24/7, without the help of a coach. And that ability is so powerful if you know how to use it, that it's really important to develop. Okay, hopefully this was helpful. See you later.